Andrew Jackson father, Uncle Andy.
Okay.
In 1916, his wife was a scales. They ended up, I think, probably either, I don't know if that house was built before then or if they built that house. But anyway, they got the property where the Hollow post office was.
Okay.
Then they moved the post office from the house up there.
Okay.
And then, I think he didn't keep it long. Maybe in the 20s, they sold it to the Bowmans.
Okay. Okay.
It's on the sheet, I don't remember that.
Cause
But,
Granddaddy Quinn carried the mail out of the post office. And he was born in, I think 1829 or 1828. So that would make sense. He would be,
1829, so he was,
he was born then, so like 49 or 50 or something, maybe. I don't know.
What
he may have
was the
secured out of the
question?
house.
He may have carried it out of the house. I just don't remember Daddy ever talking about that. He always talked about the post office. So, I don't know. I mean, Granddaddy Wynn could have carried the mail out of the house.
He possibly could. I know, I know he carried it out of the Bowman.
Yeah.
Oh, he still carried out of the Bowman
Yeah,
too.
we have pictures of him with the Bowman.
Yeah, there's pictures of him.
He looks
in
just
front of
like,
the Hollow.
he looks just like Fiddle in some
Yeah.
of the pictures. He looks just
Yeah.
like Fiddle.
Cause, you know, yeah, cause they would have been at our house till 16.
Till 16, and then Granddaddy Gwen wasn't born till 28 or 29. So by the
I
time
thought he'd been older than that. Wouldn't he been older than that? He'd been much older than that. Cause he died in 67. So I would have thought he'd have been born around 1900 or so. George.
Yeah,
Just off the top of my head. Cause my mom and daddy were born 31, 32. Theodore was born 27.
he was born 27.
So
I don't know.
George is about 1900.
Oh, yeah, I bet he is.
Cause my
I bet he
grandpa,
is.
Hobbs was 1899. They'd be about the same age.
So he probably didn't carry it out of the house.
And he'd been very young. He'd been really young. But who knows how young the mailman was back then?
I don't know. Anyway.
Kevin, you wanna start?
I got a thumbs up.
Anyway, Chip there, I've turned Chip into a monster. I've made him
I
a
know.
monster.
I was talking to him at Voyages.
With the dinky, I call him Dinkenstein behind his back, you know.
Yeah.
I call him Dinkenstein. Anyway, Kevin, do you wanna give any kind of Ruritan, what you doing or any of that?
Yeah. We can always make up something.
You get it, thank you.
All right, this is our first one this year, ain't it? All right, so we want to welcome everybody out today for our first in our Tom Talks History Series for 2024 and the launch of Tom's new book on White Sulphur Springs. And I think Tom needs no introduction. He's a man of many words. But we do want to thank y'all for coming out, and just a quick note on some of the things we do have going on here at the Ruritan Building. June 1st, we will be having our quarterly pancake breakfast, and that is for $8. You get pancakes, biscuits, gravies, eggs, country ham, sausage, apples, drink. They'll cover them all. Child's plates are $5, and if you're a local rescue squad, fire department, or police personnel, you eat free. So come out to that. And next Saturday we will have the disaster relief food ministry out here at 10 o'clock. That's a monthly. That's the last Saturday of the month. And that one and.
Wednesdays, what do you have here Wednesdays?
We don't have nothing on Wednesdays.
Well, you used to have something, didn't you, social services or something?
The Piedmont Community Services come out here on Wednesdays, that's right. That's Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. They're here. And then we have Rook on Monday nights. So if you play Rook, it's free. Come out, play Rook. On Monday nights at 6:30. Most of the time 6:30 to 8:30. Sometimes it goes to 9 o'clock. There's always something. Just check us out on Facebook, and I'll turn you over to the wise words of Tom Perry.
Good afternoon. I'm gonna sit, because I'm not feeling great, but I'm gonna sit here. We're gonna talk just a few minutes about the White Sulphur Springs. Y'all can move closer if you want to. We've got a bunch of Baptists in the back. Anyway, we're gonna show you some pictures of this thing and talk about it a little bit. For those of us who are old enough, I know Chip might have done this, but the top picture there, that's Oval Gerald. You remember Oval, he had the junkyard.
Yeah, I remember.
Mary remembers
Yes, sir,
it.
I do.
And he had the junkyard right there as you pull into the White Sulphur Springs. And me and Joey Smith spent many a day crawling under a Volkswagen at Oval Gerald's junkyard. But that's, you know, I guess his wife's still alive. Is his wife still alive? Is she still alive?
They were selling that house.
Yeah, so I
think
don't know.
so.
But that's him in front of the hotel. And on the bottom here, this is Faye Templeton. She was a Broadway actress who actually came to the White Sulphur Springs. And it's hard to imagine sometimes that there was a resort hotel this size just right down the road. And anyway, advance it there one time if you would. The far right arrow. Down here at the bottom, right there.
Oh, gotcha.
So we're here today because of these two, and we've started a scholarship when they passed away. All of you know my daddy was principal up here at Blue Ridge. What you don't know is Betty Perry was a strong education. You speak up if you need to right here. There was no question about whether we were going to college. That was not, you were going to college, that's just it. And I don't know, did you ever get that speech? I don't know if you ever got it. I got
Oh,
it,
yeah.
but I mean, you were going to college, there was no doubt about it. So advance it if you would. So we've given away about 7 of these things now. I give a scholarship, $500. And here are some of the young ladies who have gotten it in the past. There's 4 there. And they've been in as many different places as VCU and Radford and Virginia Tech. Advance it if you would. Last year we gave it to Macy Hall. Her mama, Margie, of course, was my dad's secretary. Marie Gwynn today. Went to the Blue Ridge School. Margie was Marie Gwynn, where Marie sits today. But Macy is up at Virginia Tech, and she got it last year. She wrote an essay. I make them write 1,000 words, and she wrote an essay about the Holocaust. It was really good. I would have never thought of Macy's the little girl who every time a stray cat showed up in your yard, she'd bring it down and give it to my mom. Next one, please. And Margie, of course, there died of brain cancer. 2 other people have gotten this scholarship. On the left here is Irene Smith, because I'm just afraid of Sadie. And that's all I'll say about it. And the fellow here on the right is the only male recipient of the Perry Family Scholarship, and Amy Snyder's grandson, Cole, my grandson, Cole, but Amy's grandson, Cole, pretending he's James Bond to go to the prom this week. And we, oh Lord. He's a bigger monster than you are. I've actually created a bigger monster than you when it comes to history. But Irene is over at East Tennessee, and Cole is at Western Carolina. You know, I make them write 1,000 words. Cole wrote 11 pages on Daniel Boone. He wrote 11 pages. Next one. And we'll start talking about the White Sulphur Springs. The first reference I ever had to this thing is, believe it or not, was Jeb Stewart's mother, Elizabeth Letcher Pannell. She noted before the Civil War that there were people coming to take the waters, even then, just right down the road from her house. This place was originally called Gunpowder Springs, and it's it's kind of a wayward vein, I guess, of the Ararat River that flows underground across a bed of, I guess, yellowish green sulfur on the rocks. And of course makes it have that wonderful smell of rotten eggs. And sulfur was used, of course, in making gunpowder. But after the Civil War, this place became a very significant resort. And it just amazed me how big it got. The property, from what I can tell, went all the way back to the 1700s. They apparently had a horse racing track somewhere around where the Sulphur Springs is today. They had religious camp meetings, and every one of them apparently came to take the waters. In the, of course, early 20th century, the old Dinky Railroad would bring people by or up to the White Sulphur Springs Hotel. And Ann and I were just sitting here talking, Bernie and Theodore, her mom and daddy would have been at the right age to be courting at the White Sulphur Springs, but I never remember them ever talking about that. Anybody remember their mom and daddy courting at the White Sulphur Springs? Because they used to have dances and just all kinds of stuff
Did
out there.
Grandpa tell you about the dance or something going there or something?
Well, there you go. Now you can tell us about
Well,
it.
I just remember something. I couldn't remember if you told me that or if.
I don't remember him telling me about that. He always was telling me about other things.
Yeah. I mean, I think they went to, did have an upper level or something, like the dance hall or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I think they did. We'll talk about that. But people came to drink this awful smelling water, it smelled like rotten eggs, because they thought it would cure everything, indigestion, kidney stones, bladder ailments. First time I ever heard about hydrotherapy was at Virginia Tech when Bud Robertson used to talk about how Stonewall Jackson loved to go take the waters at that other White Sulphur Springs, the one up in West Virginia. And here's an advertisement from the White Sulphur Springs just to show you what they did. If you are suffering with indigestion, liver, or kidney trouble, come and drink the White Sulphur water. It'll cure any disease in 2 weeks, including inflammation of the eyes or any trouble caused by impure blood. We'll offer names of parties that have been restored if you don't believe us. The earliest I got is 1857. A fellow named Rufus Smith came out of Rockingham County. In 1860, he traded land with a fellow named Merlin Sparger. And of course, the Sparger house, is still down there, right across from the White Sulphur Springs. We're pretty close to it. And they did some land deals, and that's how the Sparger house came to be there, and how the White Sulphur Springs came to be. Like I said, Sparger built the house that's still standing. This Rufus Smith fellow laid out a homestead at the White Sulphur Springs. So Burke Robertson wasn't the first one to try that. 4 years later, he contracted a fellow named Rufus Roberts to erect buildings at the White Sulphur Springs. And in 1874, best I can tell, they built the original hotel. So there's several of these hotels, and several of them are going to burn. And that's how it got started. 1875, the Winston-Salem Union Republican, what a great name for a paper, I guess, reported that a stage driver named Snyder would carry visitors 40 miles to the springs in Mount Airy for $3. And over the years, all kinds of different people are going to try to operate this hotel, and most of them are going to fail, but they're going to be fighting fire and depression and everything. Just to show you what it costs. In 1876, if you want to stay a month, it cost you $25 room and board. And if you want to stay a week, it would be $8. And if you stayed for 1 day, it was $1.50. Fellow then was T.M. Williamson was the manager, and people would come up there by stagecoach. In the 1890s, there was a company called the Granite City Land and Improvement Company that they advertised they were renovating the hotel and even hiring an architect from Lynchburg. And they were going to try to build behind the present hotel and fit it for overflow visitors. They said they made bricks for the new hotel. Land was cleared at the top of the hill on the high elevation, but I think things fell through and it never happened. In May of 1892, it was reported that there would be no moonlight picnic at the White Sulphur Springs, so Porter Bondurant wasn't there yet. The Yankton County Valley News reported that a new and elegant road had been built to the White Sulphur Springs and said it was a most delightful drive. So coming out of Mount Airy, you got the Springs Road and the Old Springs Road. So because of this hotel, I think both of those roads were built. So what we got right out here might not be here if it wasn't for this hotel, certainly not in the form that it is. But like I said, the old road kind of went down by what we call Linger Longer, which was the Fulton place. It's not there anymore. Pretty close to where the shooting range is.
Yeah.
For the Mount Airy, as you start up the hill. Linger Longer was the Fulton house. The old rumor was that Jim Stewart's mama would stop there on her way to church, and she changed from her everyday bonnet to her Sunday go to meeting bonnet, and she would do that at the Fulton place. If you stayed at the White Sulphur Springs, you could go on what we called excursions and behold scenes of indescribable loveliness and grandeur. You could go to the Devil's Den or the Pinnacles of Dan or to Pilot Mountain. Rates now were $30 a month, $10 a week, but children and servants stay for half price. They expanded, now they had a laundry and a livery stable, and then the railroads came to Mount Airy. Next slide, please. Railroad came to Mount Airy, I think in 1888, and in 1899 they started building the Dinky. The Cape Fear and Yadkin Valley, which I guess will become the Southern now. I guess it's the Southern. But you could get off the train and they have a tram or a hack service that would take you up to the White Sulphur Springs on, quote, a beautiful road. They built a bowling alley at the hotel. There was horse racing and fishing and rowing in the Ararat River. It's hard to imagine there was enough water in the Ararat River for rowing. In 1893, the Granite City Land Improvement Company sold the hotel to Rufus Roberts for $20,000. He started doing things, promoting the hotel. They even sent some of the water to the Chicago World's Fair. I don't know. I just can't imagine drinking that water. In the book, I talk a little bit about, Mount Airy had a lot of hotels downtown, especially the Blue Ridge Hotel. What was it, the Central Hotel, which would be there about where, Marty's Antique Mall, or maybe a little.
Renfro.
Or where,
Renfro Hotel.
yeah, it was called Central.
No, Renfro was down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was bunches of hotels in downtown Mount Airy. They apparently had to rebuild and redo the hotel, and they reopened it in 1895, and they charged you $20 a month, $6 a week, and $1.50 a day. The water, it said, was as fine as to be found anywhere. Another company now will take over the hotel. They call Brown and Haynes, and they would function as the proprietors of this hotel for many, many years. And their advertisements, they said the water can cure skin disease, inflation of the eyes, and any trouble caused by that impure blood in just 2 weeks. These statements are not made merely to get you to the springs, but these are absolutely fact. So I talk a little bit about some of the other hotels in this book. I won't do that. Advance it one more if you would. And you know, it's if you go out there today, you can see the post for this front of this hotel. You see them there in the bottom of the picture, and it's just hard to imagine how big this thing was. In 1899, Roberts made a deal with J.K. Reynolds, who's operating hotels in downtown Mount Airy. They did a swap, apparently, and J.K. got the White Sulphur Springs for $10 whole. In the early 1900s, newspapers reported they had a swinging bridge over the Ararat, and they put in electric lights. They had private baths and doors from each room opening into a wide porch. There was a dancing pavilion, there was a billiard room, 2 bowling alleys, and 2 freshwater springs if you didn't like the sulfur. In 1901, Reynolds would sell the White Sulphur Springs, and they discovered there was another spring on this place, and I'd never heard of this, called the Chalybate, Chalybet, and it's iron water. So apparently there was another spring they found. 1903, Brown and Hayes continued to manage this place, and the following year, Mr. Colonel Osborne from Greensboro came into the picture, and they could accommodate at any time nearly 200 guests at this hotel. But in 1905, the Yadkin Valley News reported that the smoke of a great fire at Mount Airy had not ceased before meeting the citizens was held to rebuild the elegant hotel. So they apparently had burned to the ground on January the 2nd, 1905. Rebuilt before the Great Depression, the resort would boast 165 rooms, a horse stable, 165 acres of lawns and woods for riding and walking. They had a 2,000-foot dancing pavilion. They're getting ready for Porter with polished wood floors, and they would have orchestras out there. They had 3 main floors with wings 4 stories high, and they could hold about 250 people at the White Sulphur Springs Hotel. You could do excursions up Fancy Gap and the Devil's Den and the Pinnacles. Apparently fried chicken was a signature meal that was consumed by the guests, and at this point now you've got governors and Europeans and actresses. One lady from South America supposedly came from Brazil and died at the hotel, and for the next, I don't know, maybe 50 years, she haunted the place, and no one would stay in her room. Next one, please. And in 1899, they started building the Dinky, and for the next 20 years or so, the Dinky Railroad would bring people to the hotel. I said they rebuilt it about 1905, and in 1912, when the railroad is coming through, the Greensboro Daily News reported that there was no more ideal place for dancing can be found in western North Carolina than the pavilion illuminated by the electric lights situated on the banks of the Pratt River. Apparently they didn't know how to spell Ararat. It was reported that one night there were 75 couples dancing with an orchestra that had a violin, a cornet, and a piano. They get bands from all over the place. You'd have bands coming in from Florida and just all kinds of people. Faye Templeton, the gal I showed you at the beginning, she was born in 1865 and died in 1939. She was an American actress and singer and songwriter and comedian. She came to the hotel often. She appeared in one movie, 1933's Broadway to Hollywood. She was known for her theater work, especially working in musicals. And here's the one that just cracks me up. She apparently on one of her visits brought her millionaire boyfriend with her. And he tried to buy all of Lebanon Hill in Mount Airy. And I'm not sure either it was a guy named Hal Osborne or William J. Patterson, because, well, how do I put this? Faye had lots of boyfriends and lots of husbands. In 1925, some of your people, J.H. Gwynn, incorporated with White Sulphur Springs and his wife, and they did a land trade. And apparently they tried to build a golf course, but they ran out of money and it was stopped. There was an attempt about this same time for a bunch of, a group of African Americans came from Durham and wanted to turn it into a hotel specifically for black people. And imagine that, and apparently the locals put the kibosh on that for some reason. In 1929, the hotel reopened. It had been closed for about 3 years, from 26 to 29. And it would open on July 1st, 1929, just in time for the Depression to come along. The hotel, like I said, had been closed for about 3 years. About this time, they built a 25,000-gallon water reserve, supposedly, halfway up the mountain. And you got to figure that thing's still there if we could ever climb up there and figure out where it is, Chip Wonder. This thing is just continually changing hands. People, it's just like the railroad, it's continually going bankrupt, or they're having money trouble and different people are buying it. By 1930, they had built tennis courts at the White Sulphur Springs, and they were doing golf in Mount Airy instead of building one for themselves. And this is May 29th, 1929, the big opening at the White Sulphur Springs. They had music from 6:30 to 8:30. The dance was held from 9 p.m. to midnight. Bamzai Curry and his Floridians from the University of Florida supplied the music at the pavilion, and they continued to have dances all through the summer of 1929. Of course, the Depression's going to hit, and I have a feeling that's going to be a downturn. Next one, if you would, and some of these are postcards, some of these are pictures. Apparently the thing to do if you were a woman was to pull up your dress and go wade the Ararat River. But there's a couple of interior shots, a couple of advertisements here, and you can see how big it was by this time. Just massive. And the only thing left today is the stands underneath the hotel. They're still there if you drive out on the road. The hotel would close in the 1940s. I'm amazed it lasted that long. During World War II, a lot of local families apparently stayed in the hotel while their men were serving overseas. On January the 11th, 1955, Miss Mattie Sawyers, who lived nearby, said she saw a fire emanating from the hotel, which had by this point become a chicken coop. One of the newspapers described it, it began as a gracious resort for the well-to-do in the 1880s and ended as the biggest chicken roast in the country. I was just trying to imagine the smell of that. Next slide. The hotel was bought by Dr. Ivan Richards, shown here in the bottom left. He was, of course, the man who was a chiropractor. He built the chiropractic clinic out there. Mike was telling me that his daddy Hobart was good buddies with Dr. Richards. You got anything you want to say about that?
Well, they come to the garage and I was doing some kind of invention doings, whatever they're gonna do. They come up to the garage a lot.
Yeah. The middle picture is old Gerald and his sister. They, of course, you know, the junkyard was right there across the river, and this is a picture of him as a young man, and this is him as I knew him, the man who I bought car parts from, right here.
Did he ever own it or anything? Did the Geralds-
He owned the whole place.
So the Geralds did own the.
Well, no, the Oval on this side of the river.
But he never owned the hotel.
He never owned the
part of
hotel.
property.
Richards owned the hotel. And where the chiropractic clinic is today, you know, it's still there. The chiropractic clinic is still there.
Okay, so that was part of it too.
Yeah, and he lived over there. He built a house that's still there, right beside where the hotel was.
Right, gotcha.
He lived in the house, and it's still there. And
That's right, I remember.
so, 1908, Burke Robertson, shown here, bought the White Sulphur. Excuse me, 2005, Burke Robertson bought the White Sulphur Springs and wanted to turn it into a 145-acre site with 22 home sites, 12 cottages, and 22-room inn, and trails, and all kinds of stuff. And then the bottom fell out of it in 2008, and he was never able really to complete that. But I will say, Bert gave it a shot, and there he is, standing in the spring. Next slide, if you will. Bert did do a couple things out there. He put a bunch of interpretive signs, and you can go out there today. They like you to come, I think, on Mondays only because they have stuff going on out there. But you can go out there to this day and still get you some of that sulfur water and bring it on home and let it air out and maybe then drink it. But Bert put up all kinds of interpretive signs out there, and he did a really good job of trying to do that. But like I said, the housing bubble burst and it fell apart. So next slide, if you will. And today it's owned by a group. I think some of the people, 13 Bones, own it, and you can go out there and get married. They built this new building. There's cabins you can rent out there. They have weddings, they have concerts, and they do all kind of stuff. You can throw horseshoes there. They have hammocks you can lay in, take you a nap if you want to. But they have built this new building, and Dr. Richards' house is still out there. And if you notice right in front, the bottom left there, you can see where the hotel was because of the supports are still there, and that's really the only thing that's left of the hotel. Next one, please. So this is our first one this year. Our next one's going to be July 28th when Beverly Woody's going to come. She writes that Patrick Pioneers article in the Enterprise every week, if you see that. And then in September, we're going to talk about Jeb Stewart because Kevin wants me to talk about Jeb Stewart. We're going to do that the weekend before the encampment. So you will be all educated well when you go to the encampment if you do. But the other thing I'd like to do is always, Pam, I get you a copy of this picture since it's got your two favorite men in it.
And large copy.
You know, large, get you a
Life size.
poster.
Life size.
Yeah, since it's got your two favorite men. But I really appreciate y'all supporting me in doing this, and the Ruritan Club has been very good to me, and even Kevin, you're handing me money there, I believe. Usually it's the other way around. I'm handing Kevin money, if you know our relationship. But anyway, hit the next one, if you would, Amy. So, the Perry Family Scholarship recipient for 2024 is Nate Large. he wrote this great article about the Civil War in Virginia. Now there's a boy that knows how to suck up to Tom Perry. Right there he is. I invited Nate today, but Nate is on a cruise.
Right.
He's gone on a cruise. We used to go to Myrtle Beach, remember? We went to Myrtle Beach. Nate's on a cruise. And apparently he drug Jonathan and Joy, proud mother here, and Nate is a little boy up here. So he's the recipient of this year's scholarship, and he's going to Virginia Tech. So he really knows. He really knows how to suck up. I was telling Kevin the best part of this is Jonathan Large had to thank me for giving his son a scholarship. That was worth
I'm
the
gonna
whole.
remind all the time, Tom Perry talks so nice about you, and it's,
And that's the best thing about this whole thing is that he had to thank me for it. And I know it hurt him. That hurt him bad. I know that it did. Next slide. My next book is going to be The Witch of Ahart Ridge. Here's The Witch of Ahart Ridge. This is an old folk tale. We'll bring this book out probably about Halloween or when we do the Jeb Stewart talk. But this is an old folk tale about a woman who wanted to be a witch, and she became a witch, and she morphed into a deer, and she got shot with a silver bullet. And Lord have mercy, I've been tromping through the woods with Clinton Gwynn and Linda Beck and all kinds of people hunting for this story. So part of the book will be the folk tale, and part of it will be the kind of the true history of this thing, or where it was in Ararat, and that sort of thing. But that's the next one coming out this fall. Next one, prepare yourself. So that's the story of the White Sulphur Springs. You can go out there, like I said, on Mondays. It's beautiful out there. Burke had really put a lot of interpretive signs. They built all these new buildings, and there again the supports where the hotel used to be, and you can see all that. But I think they're okay if you come out on Mondays and wander around out there in the bottomland along the river. It's a beautiful place. It's still a beautiful place. This is right downstream where Theodore Gwynn pulled me out of the river and saved my life. The old story. Last time we were here, I had a guy come up to me and say to me, "Oh yeah, that's where Theodore saved your life." So somebody actually read one of my books. So next slide. Oh no. We lost Brady this year, or this week. We lost Pinto. I'm sure some of you knew Pinto. It's a little unnerving for me when people who are younger than me are dying. That's a little unnerving. And I put this in here this morning. They even caught me in the recliner doing this. This me and Teddy and Ann. Me and Teddy are obviously have our eyes closed. We must be Donald Trump in court. I don't know what that's going, but that's Ann came along about 3 years after we did, and we all grew up together. And it's good you're here because
Which one's you, Tom?
you and me both have. What do you say?
Which one's Tom? Which one's Tom?
I'm on the left, and Teddy's on the right.
Yeah,
Teddy's
red
on-
shirt's Tom.
So you
Right,
got the crew cut.
Oh yeah,
Oh, the
we didn't
white
get long
shirt.
hair married till Stuart Scales came back from Fort Bragg in the 5th grade. And that's when all our hair got long.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Yes,
That's
sir.
when our hair got
I
long.
recognize Amy, but I can.
But me and Teddy's favorite hobby was jumping up and down in her crib to make her cry, so we knocked the bottom out of it. What's amazing about this picture, though, is Bertie Gwynn, no doubt, took this picture, and our heads aren't cut off. Because if Bertie ever took a picture, one of our heads would definitely be cut off. But what I was going to say, it's good you're here because Ann and I both are 2-time cancer survivors. And, Brady died last week and Pinto died. And, appreciate the people around you and cherish them because, buddy, you just don't ever know. Now, would anybody like to hear Brady Walker's story before we leave here? I've got a couple. Anybody like that? Cool. And this is me and Ann in John Boy's house up in Walton's Mountain, Schuyler, Virginia. I still love telling this. Ann's daughter, Kayla, how old was Kayla when we did this? 18, 19?
Probably 17.
17.
Yeah.
Ann and I take Kayla to Schuyler, Virginia to see the Walton's Mountain Museum. Well, we grew up watching the Walton. Well, on the way up there, I don't know how we discovered it, but we found Bertie's old Elvis gospel tapes. We made Kayla listen to her grandmother's Elvis gospel tape all the way to Walton's Mountain and back. And it was one of the, one of my favorite hobbies is torturing poor Kayla, because she's like the only niece I have, so it's my job is to torture her. I know Teddy and I have two different ways of torturing her, but that's a different story. But we took her to Walton's Mountain that day, and I don't think I hardly ever enjoyed anything much in my life, is her eyes rolling up in her head as she did this. I will give Kayla a little credit. Kayla graduated from community college this week
Sweet.
with a mechanical engineering degree, which is darn impressive to me. But anyway, I put you in the slideshow because I wanted to see these people to see that you and I really did grow up together,
Yeah.
and and to torture Kayla. So I'll end with one story about Brady, and then we'll go home. Brady literally grew up next door to me, except he was across the road. He was on the other side of the road. And my daddy's wish was that I marry Harriet, Brady's sister. That was Daddy's hand-picked daughter-in-law. Well, she was Miss Patrick County. She was blonde, about 5'8", 120 pounds, so she looked pretty good. But Brady was absolutely hilarious in some ways. Brady liked to go on Halloween and he'd put big piles of leaves out in the front yard, and he would hide in the leaves. And he would play Alice Cooper and Kiss and all these things. And the kids would walk to the house. When the door opened, there would be Mary Lee dressed up as the Wicked Witch from the East, West, the bad one in The Wizard of Oz. And there would be Harriet dressed as the Good Witch. And they would give the kids candy. Well, when you started to go back to the car, Brady would come up out of the leaves dressed as some sort of monster and just scare these kids to death and chase them back to the car. And he was really good at this. But my best Brady story is, and I say these because, I grew up with the dude, so I knew him pretty well. I had that old 64 Volkswagen growing up, and we all learned to drive riding around in that thing. Well, if you put 5 men in that car, the battery in that car was under the back seat. It wasn't in the engine, it was under the back seat. So if you put 3 grown men in the back of that Volkswagen, the seat would push down and spark the battery. Well, one night me and Joey Smith and Brady and maybe David, there was 5 of us, we're riding around that car, and 3 men in the back seat, sparks, the seat caught on fire underneath. And all of a sudden we're riding around and smoke starts billowing out of the back seat of my car. And Brady's in the middle. So we pull off to the side of the road, and it looked like a scene of a Cheech and Chong movie. Smoke just rolling out of this Volkswagen. And Joey, who was always the smartest one in the room, Joey had the foresight to pull the back seat out and throw it on the ground and put the fire out. Brady, in the meantime, is laying up here on the side of the Volkswagen about to choke to death because he's been in the middle and was the last one to get out of the car. So he almost choked to death in the back seat of my car. So anyway, that's my Brady Walker story. I appreciate y'all coming today. If anybody wants a book, I'll be happy to sign it for you. And come on in. If anybody got any questions about any of this or any stories about Ann y'all like me to tell?
So I'm curious because we didn't grow up hearing about this great place. So what was the draw? Because you said there's other hotels in Mount Airy.
Well,
What was the draw to Mount Airy?
I think they came for the waters. You
Okay.
wouldn't believe how
Okay.
big a deal it was to come and take the waters at one of these hotels.
Okay.
Look, today you still got the Greenbrier,
Well, I'm
White
just-
Sulphur Springs. It's the same thing.
I'm thinking, this is the Mount Airy version of the Greenbrier.
Yeah, it
Of course,
is.
the Greenbrier has survived.
Yeah.
They built
Well,
It's-
the golf course.
Yeah,
the
probably,
golf course.
Yeah.
probably. And then they have the
live
bunker.
guys still play the Greenbrier in golf. They
Yeah.
still play the
Yeah.
Greenbrier. So I think that's it. But like I said, Stonewall Jackson used to go to the Greenbrier. Robert E. Lee used to go to the Greenbrier and the White Sulphur Springs.
But when you talk about bands coming from Florida and that kind of stuff, all we ever heard about growing up was the people that got together and played bluegrass. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
that was the
Now,
excitement.
this was big band. This would have been like
the jazz. years.
jazz stuff and Glenn Miller and all that kind of thing during World War II. What amazes me though is that Bertie and Theodore especially would have been right at the right age to have courted at the White Sulphur Springs, and maybe they did, and they just didn't tell us.
Maybe.
Or you didn't know enough to ask.
Oh,
Right.
we didn't know
Right.
enough to ask, but
Right.
Theodore was such an encyclopedia of knowledge about this stuff that I'm sure if
Just
I
driving past it, you
brought it up, but I never
Yeah.
brought it up to him.
Yeah,
I
they used to
never
talk
brought it
about
up.
the hotel and the hotel burn.
But I
that's
mean,
it.
can't you just see Porter Bondurant down there
Yeah.
talking to all the ladies at the White Sulphur Springs? I mean, I could just see that. You know, but when Bertie Thor got married in 47. So the hotel, by then, the hotel might have been going down or even closed, you never
Did they
know.
talk about the Blue Ridge Inns?
But they certainly would have been the right age to court.
How many acres was it, Tom, when it was in heyday? Did you say
It
100?
varied. There was, all 200, around 200 acres.
So how far did it go? Did you ever see?
It would go back up, you know, like where the Burke was gonna build the houses and stuff up on the hill. I think it would have gone back up that way, up toward the top of the ridge there. So everything Burke owned, they would own, they might own a little more than Burke actually ended up buying and what they own today. But it was huge. I mean, it was a huge resort. I mean, it's hard to, I still think it's hard for us to imagine that there would have been a resort hotel right down the road that big. But it was 165 rooms at one point. 165 rooms. And that's a pretty good sized hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody else? Comments? All right, well, thank y'all for coming. Thank you for supporting the scholarship today. We'll take Nate Large up to Boyd's and give him a check here in a few days if he ever comes back from the Caribbean. But be sure to tell his dad how much I enjoyed giving this scholarship.
How many applicants did you have?
Well, I had 3 this year, and he was the only one from the Dan River, and I try to give it to the Dan River if I can. Kids that go to Blue Ridge, because obviously, Daddy was at Blue Ridge and Red Bank, so I try to do that. Now, tell us about your scholarships. You gave what, 3 away this year?
We gave away 3 this year. Rayshawn Sawyers Jr. won our $1,000 Ararat Ruritan scholarship. All our scholarships this year was $1,000. Our legacy scholarship went to Marissa Bentley. Marissa. All right, and that's correct. Her great grandfather, Johnny Young, married Manny Young, he was a charter member. That was our legacy. Then we had one that we call our local, that's just someone that lives in the Dan River voting district. Whether they went to graduate Patrick County, Mount Airy, church school, homeschool, that went to Benjamin Hyatt. His father is Patrick Hyatt, lives over on Rabbit Ridge.
So-
Those were our 3 scholarships.
The reason I bring that up is, I think the Ruritan Club and me are the only ones that give kids in this part of the county
Yeah,
scholarship.
because there's no longer a Blue Ridge PTO.
Yeah, so we're the only ones that give kids in this part of the county scholarship. So that's why it's important to me.
Yeah.
And maybe I should do a program about us growing up. We won't invite Ted.
We could do that.
We won't invite Teddy. But anyway, I put that in there because that was a great day. You can tell me and her just grinning and laughing because we're just torturing her poor daughter that day with Elvis Presley gospel music and John Boy Walton. John Boy is at the Tanger Center today doing Atticus Finch and To Kill a Mockingbird. Y'all still might go and see him. We've both seen him. We've both seen him as Atticus Finch, John Boy. But Walton's Mountain's kind of a cool place. It's just south of Charlottesville. They've rebuilt the Walton House there. You can spend the night like a bed and breakfast. They have a little museum, and they have events up there. Charlie Bowman goes all the time, getting
We
autographs.
paid for one day.
Yeah.
You
So-
can do it in a day's drive.
Yeah, it's right there south of Charlottesville, about 20 miles, and you can relive your time on the Waltons if you want to. All right, well, thank y'all very much.